The following discussion is not necessarily the views of all involved. The goal is to start open and honest discussion in the Christian worldview. Like all things, weigh what you hear with what you know and join us in our pursuit for the truth. Enjoy the podcast.
No, what a narwhal, because those guys don't have feet.
One guy on the piano that's hitting the trumpet noise and just going.
Boat, fish, land, travel, boom, he's there.
Welcome to the Second Rate States Podcast.
You're introducing things.
I'm producing now.
Whoa!
Wow.
I've been replaced.
Okay, well, are we putting down ground rules now? Like, is the person who's
You're in charge
producing supposed to say welcome to the Second Rate
Well, I
States?
am introducing Josh, so.
I do love your soothing voice entering the podcast.
No, but you've got the metaphorical conch now.
I do have the metaphorical conch, which is what we call computers now, I guess.
Joel.
Yeah.
Introduce yourself. Who are you?
I'm Joel, and I'm the producer now of the Second Rate States Podcast. Actually, you know what? Caleb's still the producer. I'm
assistant to the producer.
Assistant to the producer. Actually, I'm assistant producer. I'm claiming that title.
Yeah,
and to my left,
It's Caleb. Yeah, I used to say that I record things, but not right now. Probably next time. We'll probably be alternating. But to my left...
I'm Colton. I have never done the recording for any of these. And I know it's a hard job, so Joel, thank you so much for doing it.
You're welcome.
You do a service to this country. Yeah. And to my left...
I'm Joshua. This is my kitchen table. So I feel like I'm bringing the most to this podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's either that or a concrete sidewalk.
Yeah.
Couldn't do it without this table.
Random homeless people as guests would be so fun.
Oh my gosh. Awesome. Oh no.
That would be really cool. I like that.
Okay, save that for
wrong for
podcast
some
47.
Remind us
like
to
that
do
idea.
that for our 100th episode.
Oh no.
Oh, now we just locked that in.
We are going to be doing an interview with Edible Ed.
That's his name on the street. He's constantly moving from his
And to
point
my
of
left
origin.
is Joel again, so...
Yeah.
We've gone full circle. But...
The producing intern.
Rather than talking about what one of us have read, although we did read something, at least I hope so.
Together.
Josh, you've done mission trips in Mexico?
Yeah,
Even recently,
now.
maybe.
Yeah, I just came back from one like a week ago.
How did that go? What do you do down there? And how long is it?
Yeah, so our church, we've been going there for about 30 years now. We send an adult team and a youth team on opposite ends of the year. The adult team goes in October, and the youth team goes in March/April, whenever spring break is up here in the Great White North. Yeah. And so we've been sending teams for forever. It was like a mission statement of one of our pastors was like, we're not going to be a short-term missions church that just goes, puts down a house, and then leaves.
Never to come back.
Never
You're
to
going to
come
come
back.
back.
That's for the best.
Yeah.
Continually put into the community.
Yeah,
I love
and they
it.
said we're going to one, and we're sticking with that to the end of time.
Good.
So
I like it.
yeah,
Actual
And-
work.
Yeah, and they chose Tijuana, so
Okay.
which is a wild place if you know what Tijuana is.
Yeah.
One of my favorite things about Tijuana is there's a Pixar animated movie called The Book of Life. It's like a Mexican movie. It came out before Coco.
I don't know either of these movies, but
Yes,
okay.
no, I do know this movie. Yeah.
So it came out before it, and there's a scene where the plot of the movie is a guy's like crush, the love of his life dies, and he wants to go to the afterlife to bring her back, and ask Lady Death, I forget what it is in Spanish, to bring her back, but he has to go there to do it, so he dies, and then tries to bring her back, and they meet this like guy who lives in this place where there's all these waterfalls, which are portals to like the other domains and stuff like that, and they're like, the whole group just rushes towards a waterfall, and they're trying to get to hell, right? And
What?
Yeah, where she is, because
just
that's the
Tijuana.
afterlife. No, and the guy says, whoa. You don't want to just rush in any of these portals. You might end up in Tijuana. And their goal is hell.
That's funny.
Fair enough.
So Tijuana is canonically worse than hell.
Yeah.
By Disney.
by
Oh,
by
gosh.
animators and Mexico. Like,
Okay.
the rest of Mexico hates Tijuana.
So what are some of the things that the missions that your church supports there?
So,
Like a church, obviously, probably.
yeah, so there is a church that we've been supporting for the last 11 years. There's been other churches we've supported, but it's usually a whole community.
Yep.
Currently, it is a pastor named Abelino in East Tijuana. Him and his wife, 3 kids, 3 sons, twin daughters, I think one more daughter. I forget. Their whole life has been a miracle and a blessing from God. Blessing after blessing after blessing. Not in like the traditional way that we would think of, where like, oh, they're living in a mansion and they've got tons of money. But like,
More in the Pauline way.
yeah, where they're living in destitution, but every moment of their life is just another act of God shown in their lives for other people. And so, like, for example, the when she was pregnant with the 2 twin daughters, she was told by multiple doctors across Mexico that she was going to die. Her and the 2 kids.
Right.
And so you need to abort the kids. And she said no. And the family said no, and the community said no. And she went, and the doctor's like, hey, like I've no case of this has ever worked out. This is not going to happen. Lo and behold, she's alive today. Their kids are like 7 years old, and that doctor's now a Christian.
That's
Wow.
cool.
So because he birthed the kids, and he's like, this shouldn't be happening.
Right.
Like what's happening?
That's so cool.
There's a bunch of culty stuff that happens on the hills near East Tijuana there, and like sacrificing people on high
Really?
places. Like yeah.
Oh my gosh, the Aztecs are back.
Yeah.
Where's my wooden spoon?
Yeah. And he's been harassed by them and by the people in the community to be like, hey, you need to stop doing what you're doing because we hate it. And he's like, yeah, but I want to stop the drugs from taking our children, so I'm going to build this soccer field where they can spend their time. And I've seen it in a vision, so it's going to happen. And then our church comes by that summer and builds it. And then
That's pretty awesome.
All the darkness and the drugs in that area just disappears. And then he gets told by God he's going to build a soup kitchen in this other area that's drug infested and crime filled.
Yeah.
He builds that. People donate the land to him. He gets another missions team from another area in the United States. They build it over a period of 2 years, and they're now feeding the entire community because no one has food.
Right.
That's awesome.
That is awesome.
Right. And so, like, that's what it is, just blessing after blessing.
What is it like going back? Seeing, so like, you go there 1 year, or such and such a year, right?
Yeah.
You go there, you do this thing, but, you understand that it has a potential for the kingdom of God to work through it and the impact. And then you go back later and you see that potential actualized. What does that do then for the trip that you're on now, where you're doing this new thing?
Yeah.
And then looking forward as you actually see God's kingdom redeem people.
Well, it's crazy. What it does is it makes every Bible story seem like it can actually happen. Because so many times when we read Old Testament Bible stories, we're like, wow, that's crazy.
Axes don't float.
Right? Like, wow, like parting of the Red Sea, this community just gets devastated and God rebuilds it in 14 days, whatever.
These insane miracles.
These insane miracles. And then you go down there and you see it.
Right.
And you're just like, oh,
Yeah.
this just happened. This is crazy.
Bit of a wake-up call, too.
Yeah, because suddenly you realize that you're in a world with a God.
Okay, so there's a couple of ways that can go, right? Because I've also heard of mission trip being the reasons why people leave the faith as well.
Okay.
That they've never truly confronted this kind of poverty that you're talking about, and they go there and they don't see God. They see poverty, and they see the problem of suffering in a real sense, not just your modern Western, like, can't pay the rent kind of suffering, but like...
Yeah, like me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not like
I
college
think
kid.
like all of us, Josh. Thank you very much.
Here's the thing, though. I had enough money to feed myself last night. I'm doing pretty good.
That's awesome.
Wow.
That being
Good for
said,
you.
your comment, actually, Joel, gets into our topic. Josh, actually, you're the only person that has read this book, and I feel a little bad it being the subject.
It's okay.
But there's a book. Well, actually, you can.
Yeah, it's called Confronting Christianity by Rebecca Mclaughlin. It's a good, like, one of those Christian books that you read because you're like, wow, I haven't read a Christian book in a while, and I need to, like, reread everything. Like, keep all the ideas fresh in my head. Yeah. It's, Confronting Christianity, 12 Hard Questions for the World's Largest Religion. Yeah, it's, like, 12 standard questions that, like, you hear in, like, debates. And
like Problem of Evil, like Joel was mentioning.
Yeah, the Problem of Evil.
Also, did putting water on it make you think it was going to grow a bigger book, or is it just water damage?
That's some wicked water damage.
That's water damage, because it was in my car, and it was really moist in my car.
Wow, it must have been really moist
That's
in your
some
car.
sweaty book. Anyways.
Yeah, we live in a very wet place on this planet. So like some of the chapters are like, aren't we better off without religion? Does Christianity crush diversity? Does religion hinder morality? How can you take the Bible literally? Doesn't science disprove Christianity? Isn't Christianity homophobic? And generally the answer is absolutely not. Here's 20 pages why. Or
in a very basic introductory.
Yeah. It's
anybody can read it kind of sense.
Yeah, it's a good way where, like, if you were to read this, then Mere Christianity, great. It's
like a double tap. Bam, bam.
Yeah, it was because, like, sometimes Mere Christianity, just for certain people, just doesn't click. I love that book. We all love that book. We spent multiple podcasts talking about this book.
I think we brought it up every podcast.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness,
Great.
every single time.
We've hit the C.S. Lewis reference time. What's our time?
Our time is 12 minutes. Wait, that's not accurate.
It's 12 minutes for us.
It's 12 minutes for us in real time.
Yeah, and so it's like,
It
whereas,
didn't take very long this time.
and it's just like his particular writing style is particular to certain people. So,
Yeah.
well,
No,
C.S.
it's
Lewis.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
So, but if, like, what's really good about her book is really open to, like, anybody reading it, because it asks simple questions and answers simply.
What was the name of the book again?
Confronting Christianity.
Okay.
12 Hard Questions for the World's Largest Religion by Rebecca
McLaughlin.
See, yeah, that's how you
Irish
pronounce
name.
it. Yeah. I want to say Mclaughlin,
Yes.
but
McLaughlin.
That's the British in you coming
Got
out.
the whole squad, McLaughlin.
Yeah.
wow.
So it's good. One of the coolest things, like, back to the mission strip stuff, is like next year we're probably building 3 mini homes for, like, single families, so that while they're working, their kids can get fed at the soup kitchen.
That's
and
awesome.
There's a hill where a bunch of the sacrifices and stuff are happening that he's going to be, like, taking over and buying. And then we're going to build a church on top of it and call it Church on the Rocks.
That is awesome.
Church on the Rocks?
Yeah.
That's such a cool name.
And
On this rock, I will build my church. Kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's just gonna be St. Peter's Church.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it's going to be like, his whole thing is like, we did church outside, and Mexico does things loud for church. So like, but like, we did it outside this year for this community festival, and they just turned the volume to like 12. And so like, and they're in a valley, so everybody could hear us worshiping.
Right.
And he wants to do that every day on the hill. So
You
that just
can't hide from Jesus.
yeah.
By nature of him being God.
Did you guys grow up with open air services? Was that a thing for you? Because that sounds...
For Easter.
Sometimes.
Easter?
Sometimes.
No.
You'd have an Easter morning service. It'd be a sunrise service. So you'd go up. It'd be like 6 o'clock in the morning. Everybody would show up. Everybody's half asleep, and then the pastor would be like, "Jesus rose," and it was a really good time, and it was awesome.
Dude, we set up the drums on the government wharf, and we had at it. Like, it was right in the middle of town. Like,
Nice.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Was Africa able to hear it on the other side of the
There we go.
land?
Yeah, we were trying to minister to Europe. No, it was good. It was loud because we were kind of like not exactly.
I'm just
valley,
going
but
to
a bay.
airdrop Christianity to you.
Oh my god.
People in planes are going to hear this. Okay, so we do have this problem though of Westerners going on mission trips, seeing true suffering,
Yeah.
and really not being able to come to terms with it. Why do you think that is?
Um,
Do you think it's that we're coddled over here, or is it extremely bad and we just don't want to think about it?
I think it's a bit of the shock.
Yeah.
We do a lot of work on, like, every night we have, like, a debrief. And, like, we do this thing where we come back to the base, we eat dinner or whatever, and then the base we stay at, which is also a missionary group that we work with that works down there. And there's people from our church that now live in Tijuana that run bases and stuff like that for missionaries. And so we stay at one of them. And when we're there after dinner, after we, like, rest for a bit, we meet up and we do a debrief where we talk about, like, hey, so, like, let's recap what happened today. Highs or lows is one of the things we do. So, like, what were some of the highs of the day? What were some of the lows? And we just allow them to talk as much as they want. And then we do another one where it's like shout outs. To encourage each other, like, hey, did you see somebody do something that was really good?
Right.
And then we talk about, like, what didn't work, what did work, like things that we can improve on for next trips and stuff like that. And
Well, I think a great example of what Joel is talking about, like that's a great idea of, at the moment,
Keeping people grounded.
dealing with it, which needs to happen in the moment. But there's also, there was one during the rise of Billy Graham. There was a evangelist called Charles Templeton, who, kind of almost the same level when they were rising, and this is when Billy Graham, before he got really, really big.
Right.
But he saw on the cover of a National Geographic a starving African child who was, I think they were just in line for water. And behind the child was just a vulture watching. And so that was the image of National Geographic, and there's a whole thing. But his whole thing was, that image cemented so many of his doubts into what he accepted as, well, clearly God just allows suffering because or he doesn't care, or he doesn't exist. And he sided obviously with the don't exist, and that's where he ended up going. And I think that kind of gets more into what you're talking about, because he had gone to Africa a couple times, this guy, and done his thing, right? But he knew that happened, and he'd been with those people, but he hadn't seen that in person because he was in the cities and this thing, right, during the events. But for whatever reason, it was, I think for him, it was, he had met people that were close proximity to that situation, but when he finally saw that situation, then everything was like, oh, those people that I met actually live in those situations. I just dropped in, said some stuff, and left, and I'm supposed to be, everything's supposed to be fine.
Yeah. So one of the things in Mexico that they do a lot, Christians down there in Mexico, is they share testimonies all the time. We walked into, and there's a pattern. It's the same pattern, and I think it's the answer to this. And it's something beautiful that I've noticed, and I've really hammered into the youth when we go down there, is we walk, for example, I want to give you a couple examples of the testimonies to show you. We went into a men's home, halfway house for prisoners, druggies, ex-cons, stuff like that.
Ministry run halfway house?
Yeah.
Okay.
A woman from our church went down there, started working with a church, did ministry down there for a few years, and then married a guy who himself was in a halfway house for men, a Christian one, and then became passionate about it and started one by himself. And they're married now and they run it. And it's beautiful. And the whole thing is you can leave if you want. You're not being held there.
Right.
If you don't want to be here, you don't have to be. Right. But if you're here, then you've got to partake in what's happening. And we get there, and we bring 16-year-old, 17-year-old boys, right, with us to do ministry, because we're going to eat with them, share testimonies and stuff like that. And this 35-year-old guy comes up to us, and he's like, hey, it's so nice to see you. Here's a picture of me when I was 20 and on drugs. This is look at me now. I'm healthy, all because of the Lord. And I was going through hard time, and I was running from the Lord, and I was going into the dark direction, the wide path, and then the Lord really placed it on my heart that I needed to be better, and I could turn around, and I could make changes in my life and be a better family member and be a better father. And this guy Uriel, who runs this home, he found me, and so I was like, hey, this is God's obviously put this guy in my heart. I'm gonna do everything I can. Another guy, he's 23, he's younger than I am, and he was just like, whoa, like, you guys want to come down here and hang out with us? Right? And these youth are like terrified of him. Right? And because, you know, in the wet, like in wealthier areas, we look down on these people. And they were like, wow, you guys want to like hang out with us? And they were like, yeah. And he's like, whoa, like, you know, I was getting out of like middle school. I was a druggie and I accidentally killed a guy and I went to prison for a while, but then I got deported. But then, you know, I was praying one day and I heard God, and the guy who runs this house showed up and he was like, hey, do you want to get out of this life? And he was like, yeah. Now he's been here for 3 years. And
Right.
This other woman, she's 17. She has a kid. She has postpartum depression. She was the happiest person we knew like 3 years ago when she was still in the church. She still is. She's fine. She's doing good. She witnessed her dad get shot in the neck while a guy was trying to rob their house.
Oh my gosh.
And he drove himself to the hospital.
Holy crap.
So intense.
Did he make it?
Goodness.
Yeah.
Okay.
And he
Jeez
was there
Louise.
when we were on the trip.
That's wild.
Yeah.
Right? And she's like, and I prayed to God that, you know, that he would help me not feel so alone, and that he would save my dad, and that I would, I just needed my dad, and he's alive now, and I'm still sad, but I'm glad that the teams keep coming and helping out our community, and I'm able to go to church and I have people around me, and it's every testimony's like that.
Right.
Why do you think it is? Oh, man, we're going so off base, but I like this conversation.
It's coming kind of as a natural progression. Yeah.
Yeah.
Why do you think it is that in the Western context, and maybe this is just North America, why do you think it is that it's so hard for us to share testimony? Because I was trying to think of this, because you and I talked about this a while ago, and you made an offhand comment like, it's just something we don't do. And I was trying to think about, why don't I share my testimony more? And
I think it's because I've thought about this a bit, and I'll wrap back to it, but I don't think the apocalypse, when Jesus says that, I know, when Jesus said that people would fall away from Christ because they would grow cold to the gospel, I don't think that's because of pain. I think that's because of pleasure. And I think that when you live a life of opulence while sinful, when you experience pain or discomfort or shame, its nail is 3 times wider. Its hit is so much more painful because we're so used to how good it is, and our responses are always going to be awful to it because we're sinful. And so when we live in such good places like Canada or the US, and we have all the food we need, literally anything that people have been praying to God for the entirety of history, we have.
dude, like 80 years ago, it's still that case. It's still the way.
I know. And we have that, and then we see pain and we go, how could a God let this happen? But for the people who have been living in that their entire lives, they only see God. Like
I agree.
Yeah.
Now,
And how does that tie into why we don't share?
this isn't a whole entirely new idea.
No, I know.
Because like even Justin Martyr in like the early church, and you also have like World War I, and you have like it rears its head.
Yeah.
But for whatever reason, it was always a cognitive argument. Now it's an emotional argument.
For the problem of pain?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's because, like, for them, like, why is this... Sorry, say your question again.
How does what you're saying about, like, all that connects to...
Because we're so used to having a good life and having pleasure that admitting to somebody else the horrible things we've done in our testimonies, because that's obviously where it goes with testimonies. I've done something horrible, or I've experienced a hard life, and God's pulled me out of that or corrected my ways. That because we're so averse to pain, because we've become so good at avoiding it, everything in life in the West has become about staying as far away from pain and suffering.
Right.
Which is good. That's what humans do. That's what creatures do. But because we become so good at it, that to purposely dip our foot back into it.
Kierkegaard. purposely make things harder.
What is so averse to our minds. Whereas if you're in it every day, it's just like, oh, it's everyday life.
Sure.
Whereas if you're living in opulence, you see that dark pit so strongly, and we're so averse to it.
That's interesting. I've never thought
and
about
a lot of
that.
shame.
Yeah, I've never thought about it like that. I think if I were to answer, that's interesting, but
Yeah.
I think part of it also is our society. Like you were saying, we're living in opulence, but that's even just as Christianity. I think that us as a culture, there's something about being polite that's not sharing yourself with someone else, like
Okay.
keeping yourself like very separate, very individual, at least more modernly. So telling someone about yourself feels like a breach of like boundaries, I think, in society. So that might contribute to it as well.
I think it definitely would. Yeah.
Well, okay. There's something that I thought was not necessarily a character flaw, but the more and more I've thought about it, the more I've realized, oh, this is definitely a character flaw in you, Caleb. Is people will tell me a story. People want to tell me a story about themselves or a story about something. And for the most part, unless I have an emotional connection with them, I don't care.
Yeah.
I super don't care.
You want to care, though.
No, not until recently.
Right,
Not until I was
okay.
like, oh, this is actually a problem. Because if they could say, like, if they're telling me a story, and if I could go abstract with it, then I could care about it in the reverse way, right? Because it's like, oh, I care about the general idea of, father-son relationship or whatever. But I don't care about you, the person, which is what I realize is bad.
So the reason is Caleb?
Well, also,
So I realized that for me, one of the reasons why I didn't share my testimony for the longest time, and I still don't, is I also assumed, because like
You're
Joel,
you're not impacted by other people's stories.
that's the thing, but that's a problem with me in me too. But Joel, I think he can confirm that every now and then I'll be talking about something in my past, and you'll just be like, wait. What?
Yeah. You have to be around Caleb for a long time to actually figure out what's going on.
It's very true.
Well, because
that or get in a long car ride with him and bring out some sad music, then he just opens up like a waterfall.
It's like boiling a clam.
okay, but for whatever reason,
It's a very weird reference.
To nothing.
Not if you're from the East Coast.
We were on a wharf. I already covered this.
but for whatever reason, I assume that other people also have this opinion where it's just like, yeah, you're an individual. Unless I'm emotionally invested in you, I don't really care about your experiences, because there's almost 8 billion people on this planet that I could hear roughly the same story from over and over and over. But that's super not good.
Yeah, that's pretty bad.
Isn't it? Yeah. And so, hi, it's Caleb. I'm a horrible
we can't
human
just
being.
leave Caleb here. What does that mean for people? Is it because we're too individualistic?
Well, my
contributing
proposition is that, am I the only person that feels that way,
No.
or do the majority of Westerners feel that
I think
way? That was what I was trying to say.
I think this could be a mix of what Colton and I are saying, which is like you don't share about yourself, but also we live in such great times here, the wealthy, that when we all know that we're actually going through hard stuff, but because we see everybody else is going through good stuff, like in life, that
At least how we perceive it.
we perceive that everybody's having a great time, that we're like, oh, I'm having a bad time. I need to make sure people think that I'm having a good time. Subconsciously, kind of like what we do with social media. Doctor images, make sure my life is good, stuff like that, so people like me and higher social status.
Do you think part of that comes from the idea that we switched from being, to bring up Peterson a little bit, from an honor culture to a prestige culture? That we want to look as good in front of people as possible so that we have the most quote-unquote prestige. And if we start being open about ourselves, talking about flaws, you're going to lose prestige with people, or at least certain people.
Do you mean moving from a guilt culture to a shame culture?
No, I mean that because in an honor culture, there are different things that make you lose status and gain status.
Yeah.
But in the West, since we moved towards more things like prestige, that it's our achievements that make us higher status. It's making money, who you are, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And because of that, opening up to people, talking about your own failures is a way to lose prestige in that way.
Yeah.
At least
Could be
you
that.
perceive it to be.
I think just another big thing is like what we're seeing right now is we're talking about us. Their testimonies are always talking about God and what He's done in their life.
Sure.
That's fair.
Not what they did, though that's a part of it. It's always look at how God changed. Look how God worked in my life, and that's the point of testimonies. Is that's how they share God to people.
Yeah.
Is they it's also like the Paul's idea of the church as one body is when the leg is hurt, the whole body feels the pain. Is they are constantly sharing their testimonies, because in that way they can together rejoice in the work of God in their lives, and then also share in each other's sufferings.
Yeah.
And so it acts as a way, because Mexico is such a strong like community basis to their culture.
Yeah.
That it's everybody knows each other's pains, the struggles they go through, and they're all helping each other, and they're all rejoicing together. Like when they do worship, it doesn't sound great at all, because there's just one guy on the piano that's hitting the trumpet noise and just going max to 1,000. You can't hear the guitar.
I like that he only has to hit one key. There's many more. There's just the one.
Yeah, but it's always like that, like the bad like loud keyboard setting, and then it's just and it's just great. Because you're just singing your heart out, and it's not a good noise, but it's a joyful noise, and that's what the Lord called us to sing.
Yeah, fair enough. So Colton and I have also been on short-term missions trip stuff, and we kind of took the testimony thing as like a debriefing thing. So like you said, you debrief at the end of every day, or whatever. And
we also
go
do at the
through
end of the
highs
trip.
and lows.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
we did
debrief
too.
at the end of the trip.
Another thing is, after we're done all that, then we sing, then we do chapel, then we do like small group stuff.
Cool.
So
yeah. And we found that was a huge part, again, of sharing the suffering of the day, right? If it was a particularly bad day, then we got to talk about it.
Yep. Work through it together.
Yeah, for sure. And that's helped when I've led, church groups aside from that, right? But you're right when you say it's not like a normal thing for us to do in our own Christian culture, is to bring up exactly what's wrong. Well, we'll bring up what's wrong currently, but we won't bring up what God has brought us through. Does that make sense?
Yeah, because I don't think... I don't necessarily disagree with the examples that Josh and Colton were giving. But I don't...
There's obviously something else.
Yeah, well, my whole thing was, are we... The reason why I brought up, like, the weird thought that I had, are we so individualistic that we don't care about other people's stories? Is that...
Guaranteed.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't mean that in a like
obviously it's right, Caleb.
Obviously it's right, Caleb, but I mean like I absolutely... Let me stop you there. I absolutely agree. And I think that's sometimes when the individualistic culture of the West rears its ugly head. But I think for the most part, individualism is also why the West has money.
Oh yeah. I think
I'm just gonna stop you there. I completely agree. Like
we sacrificed a lot to work towards the kind of society we have today. I think some of the things we let go of way too quickly. So with the Enlightenment specifically, I keep bringing up the Enlightenment, but it revolutionized the world. Western culture becoming this individualistic, capitalistic kind of society did move away from this communal aspect a lot more. And in doing so, we lost things like sharing lives with each other.
Here's the thing.
I think
you are with someone, but you're not like part of their quote unquote family. They're not as close to you as you would like.
But I think
I would like, I should say.
Sure, as like a culture, I absolutely agree. But the churches have been doing a good job throughout this period of time in the West in making sure that the community aspect stays strong.
In comparative to culture as a whole, yes.
Yeah.
In comparative to how good of a job we could be.
Yeah, but
Well,
I think that's kind of why I brought up the prestige stuff.
I don't want to be bogged down in history. But it is worth pointing out that I think the individualism that we have today has roots in the Enlightenment. but it has not always been this individualistic.
Yeah.
From the Enlightenment onward. Even like you go 100 years and families were still super closely knit.
Yeah. Single parenthood is on the rise.
Yeah, yeah. And so it's not just like Enlightenment, boom, growth of individualism. We're just, it
was the point at which we realized that individualism was taking effect.
Yeah, and to the greatest extent that it has.
Yeah.
I think it's a compounding force of a lot of factors.
Sure.
Of course. That's why we're arguing
all of history is.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's important to point out that type of individualism didn't start.
Yeah. It's not the fault of the Enlightenment just directly. I mean,
no, that
term.
type of individualism, that detrimental type of it didn't start exactly at the it started more so in the last 100 years.
Yeah.
And the community culture, the community of Mexico, specifically surrounding the churches, is wild. The leader for our Mexico missions trip lived down there like 11 years ago when he was like 18. Built that pastor's house. My first year, we did the drywall and the insulation for the church. The next year, we painted it. Then the year after that, a bunch of our team built the second floor to their house because they had more kids. We built a soccer field that was on a hill, so we evened out the land and stuff like that. This year we started the construction of a bathroom for the soup kitchen.
Nice.
And now it's like I've had talks about those people. I've talked with them like I do at family dinners. Like they're family at this point. And like it's so like how they deal with us. The leader brought his kid with him, who's like 1.5. Him and his wife were like the major leaders, and the Abelino and his wife and the other woman there and that like run it and stuff like that. They were like, our grandkid, we finally get to meet him, right? Because Brandon's been a part of their life so much. And it's beautiful the way that like everybody is just, community is so important, because that, specifically God through community, is how they answer that problem of pain. Because they see the pain and it wears them down, but oh my gosh, they go through so much. Like I was talking with the one woman who her husband was the one that got shot in the neck.
Yep.
And I just wanted to encourage her because it was on my heart. And I was like, hey, like, it breaks my heart to see what you guys go through. Like, we've known each other for forever, but it is crazy to me that you guys go through this and you're still here. And she was like, well, I've never seen somebody get shot before. That's like, and she was like, really? And I was like, yeah, here up in the north, it's not like, yeah, sure, if you're in like some bum
Surrey, anywhere in Surrey.
No.
Okay. Thunder Bay.
No.
Oh, you're right. Those are nice mostly.
I'm talking like Fairview, Alberta. like Whitehorse, like some backwater town on the highway that nobody stays at.
Princeton.
Yes. It's just like yeah, sure, maybe, right? Because everybody's drunk all the time, whatever. But like, we just don't see that. And she was like, and I was like, I just want you to know that like, it is incredible how strong you are as people. Like, it is so evident how powerful God works through your life. And she started crying. And it was just like, I was like, God doesn't build people like you very often. I was like, you're an incredible human being.
That's awesome.
And yeah, we hugged and cried for like an hour. It was great.
Good.
But that's what it is. It's just community, because like, and she's still running that soup kitchen every day.
Wow.
Feeding kids.
That's wild.
Right.
That's awesome.
Like, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I love this.
Yeah.
Let's go on to
Dinosaurs.
We could.
They're in the book of Job. Look it up. Don't look it up. I'm sorry. I should have said, well,
Bible jokes.
look into it.
Oh my
There's
gosh.
also unicorns in the Bible, but that's a whole other story.
That's
We're
in the
gonna
King
leave-
James only.
Well, not exactly. So,
Oh no. Oh
The
no.
Geneva Bible as well.
no, it's Septuagint.
Anyway, so the other
It is because they mistranslated the word for like a type of ox that was in the Sinai Plains.
I choose to believe.
Yeah, super weird.
I
Narwhal?
choose to believe.
No, wasn't a narwhal because those guys don't have feet.
But they could have.
That's a scientific
like the
answer.
serpent.
Are we saying that narwhals were cursed so they don't have feet?
Maybe.
That's awesome.
anything that doesn't have feet, cursed.
Let's put that one in the intro. I like it.
One of the other questions actually in the Confronting Christianity. So there's like the question 11, which is the how could a loving God allow so much suffering? We didn't really give a head-on answer there, but we did relate it to your trip into Mexico, which is fascinating. Actually, the first question is, aren't we better off without religion? Which is because I've heard that this argument with even places like Mexico, many places you can see even in Africa and in a lot of other third world countries where it's like, well, and you could make the argument, as some have, Christian or not, that hey, the Middle East is held back by religion, and we're all better off without it, and yet those who have it, wouldn't we be better as a society, as a human race, when our quality of life go up?
It's an interesting question that I used to wrestle with, but I think it's that my answer, at least the simple answer, is what do you replace it with?
Well, I was thinking communism.
No.
Because that's what... Well, hang on. Hear me out.
That's another one for the podcast.
Here's the thing.
bingo.
That's what Nietzsche said.
It's too dumb to object to.
Waste your brain cells fighting me.
Oh no.
But here's the thing. I want to hear his argument because the poorer I get, the more I like socialism.
Okay, hear me out.
No. I won't hear
Religion
you.
is the opiate of the masses.
Yeah, thanks,
yeah.
Marx.
Is this whatever floats your quote?
No, but it could be. It's where the lost get profound.
Oh,
Karl Marx.
No,
I don't know if
How the lost get more lost.
However, I do have a lost get profound quote for you.
Okay, good.
But
The big issue with getting rid of religion is that what do you base a society off of? What values? What cultural identity do you base off of? Religion's very easy to do.
This is
what else?
Nietzsche's whole big point in the whole God is dead and thus speaks Zarathustra, if I'm pronouncing that right.
Zarathustra, yeah. That's a fun word.
Which you were carrying that around in chapel once, eh?
Yeah, I forgot it was in my pocket, and I walked into chapel
That's
with
funny.
Thus Spoke Zarathustra. I spent a whole day while I was fishing trying to pronounce the name.
But
anyways, that's a side.
You were fishing for a name?
I was.
To Colton's point, that is his whole thing. It's just like,
Yeah.
Now that God has been removed as the underpinning of society, what do we do? And his whole prediction, and a little bit, and Dostoevsky's in his book Demons, or sometimes called The Possessed, that is their whole argument, is like, when you remove the underpinning of society, what's left?
Yeah.
Because you have to come up with something. You either come up with Nietzsche's Übermensch, or you, as the Dostoevskian theory, is the idea that you're going to buy into some sort of societal reconstruction that's going to end up with millions of people dead. And both were right.
Yeah.
Are you saying Dostoevsky or Solzhenitsyn?
Not Solzhenitsyn. Dostoevsky, Demons, or The Possessed.
Okay. Cool.
Solzhenitsyn retroactively, basically. Something very similar.
Well, right now, ever since like the 70s, the 50s, I don't know, it's hard to say, but with the advent of secularism, we have kind of the phantom of British Protestantism. Hard work, all the different values that we hold come in America and Canada and all those places come from that as the underpinning cultural values. But we don't have anything to base. We don't have anything that actually unifies us. So all it's going to do is slowly splinter and fall apart.
Well, I mean, that's what Protestantism does by itself. But
That's
a different
true.
joke.
Made
That's what
to split.
people do.
Yeah. And that's obviously the answer is people are complex, but we're not going to stop there. Why would we stop there?
We could do the intro, go, share our names, and go, it's complicated, and...
It's like...
It's the answer to literally everything.
Yeah.
That and Jesus.
Well, I don't think it's the answer. I think it's the start of the conversation. It's complicated. We're going to be here for 4 billion years
That's
talking
just-
about it.
Yeah. That's just the
No,
start way.
Jesus is coming back tomorrow.
Oh, maybe.
you can't prove me wrong
You're right.
because tomorrow is.
And I wish. It was so cool. Actually, I don't know because it's terrifying.
One of the interesting things, going back to the question of are we better off without religion, one of the interesting sociological studies, I thought it was Pew Research who's done this. I forget the exact.
Chances are.
Man, if we had a Jamie, we could just pull it up in like 3
We need
seconds.
a Jamie.
Now they all know we watched Joe Rogan.
Yeah,
They knew that from the start.
There's a study about like quality of life.
Yeah.
And regardless of what religion you're actually part of, religious people tend to at least claim to be more satisfied and have a health and not healthier, be more fulfilled in their like 50s, 60s, and 70s. Having kids does as well. Like it's not just like any like religion has a cornerstone on that. But yeah, religion helps. Quality of life.
And building off that idea, yeah, exactly. People like to point out very specific bad things about specific religions.
Galileo.
Well, even Christianity has its problems here and there, especially in history. But they also tend to conveniently leave out all the good things. Like Christians give the most to charity of anyone.
Yeah.
Like worldwide, it's crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, unless you count Muslims who have to do it.
No, it's the billionaires.
Oh, but if we talk about
Yeah,
percentage of income,
individually.
percentage of income.
But even Christians,
Because the what is it? They did the math. Like there are 4 billionaires in the world that have given more money than everyone else combined for the last 100 years.
I wouldn't doubt it.
That's funny.
So basically, like when we talk about how like billionaires are bad, like yeah, sure they've done horrible things, but like if we just took the charity thing, they're doing better than all of us combined.
And that's just a select few of them.
Yeah.
And then you spread it to billions of people who worship Christianity, or even the billion something people that worship Islam. And both of these people give a lot of money to charity, try to help people. Even churches themselves, I've heard the argument like, why are we giving tax breaks to churches? The answer is because they actually give more to the community than most other places.
I do find it super
Food
funny.
banks, running certain help missions, things with homeless, stuff like that. It's just,
I do find it very amusing when people are going to be like, the churches, they're like, do all this horrible stuff. It's like, yeah, but have you ever delivered for the food bank? Do you do these things?
Yeah.
Not that I'm actively doing that right now, but I should.
I used to.
No, but you're doing it with your time. And time is more than money.
But time is more than money.
Yeah.
Part of the problem
Worth
also...
more.
Worth more, yeah.
Maybe your time.
I think part of the problem also comes from the fact that I think many Christians who even go to their churches don't even know they have a food bank that they could give food to or they could help deliver with.
Yeah, for some. So those are like the sociological, not just sociological, but like those reasons. What about, like, because there'll be people that point to, well, what about, like, Islam and even like religion has held us back scientifically for so long. That's the reason why we didn't progress. That religion is what...
That's not true. I mean, this is what held us back, but...
that's the reason why we went into the Dark Ages and all that kind of stuff, is because the church took over. What's our response to that?
Religion's the reason we came out of the Dark Ages, but
it is.
And it's also not the reason we went into the Dark Ages, because even though Christianity, yes,
Fall of Rome was kind of...
There's like 10 other reasons before Christianity.
Yeah. Although it kind of kept us in the dark, this very specific, and only really later on. Or like, yes, the Dark Ages had a lot of things like Christian hegemony over ideas and stuff like that, but even still, like...
You know what kept us in the Dark Ages mostly? Poverty. Because once we hit
darkness,
because once we hit that level of poverty, like you look at other places like Venice and Genoa, and even like you look at Eastern Europe as well. Those places that actually had a little bit of at least some income flowing. Yeah, Dark Ages didn't hit as bad. No. Neither did that extremist ideological religion hit as bad. Yeah, it seemed as though with poverty, with the destitution, with everything that went wrong, people turned into a very ideological, super fundamentalist, super very specific, organized religion that seems to be more of a reactionary effort to the Dark Ages than a cause of the Dark Ages.
Yeah. Also, if you're going to do that, how do you explain things like Islam being one of the leaders of scientific thought through the Dark Ages and stuff like that.
We use their numbers.
We do.
Yeah.
The English alphabet uses the Arabic numbers rather than Latin numbers.
Yeah.
Because it's easier and better. But Latin numbers
I'll
can
agree.
be painful to
I
write,
agree.
but you don't want to.
I don't want to.
Yeah. I think that saying religion is bad and then pointing to all the bad things isn't really fair, because it were Christians that brought us out of it with the scientific revolution, with the Enlightenment.
During the
people
Dark
like this.
Ages, where was the actual intellectual thought held?
It was in the churches.
It was in the monasteries.
Monasteries,
Yeah,
yeah.
it was in the monasteries.
The only reason why we have documents from that far back.
Absolutely.
Well, yeah, it's so sad because like there's
printing
so many
press.
things we forgot how to do. We went back to making buildings out of stone.
Yeah.
Not a good time.
Like we
Using
forgot how to
thatch
make
huts.
water move uphill.
Yep.
Hold on. I only know how to do that with a water pump.
What's an aqueduct?
They
That sounds
forgot how to
complicated.
make aqueducts.
Yep.
And they had them just lying around.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Can you imagine living in a time when, like, 100 years ago, people were smarter than you are now? Yeah. That's super weird.
Well, no,
I
just-
know it's like chronological snobbery. That's
Well,
fine.
no.
but,
This
you know.
like the Dark Ages was it? You know, like video games or movies where people go into like a post golden era where they're like you see like the old like astronomical building with like the spaceship sticking out of it, but it's got like the vines and stuff growing
Yeah,
out of it.
yeah,
But people are like living with like sackcloths and stuff like that, right? It's just
If
like
you're starving, how is a rocket ship going to help you?
yeah, right. But it's just like that's what the Dark Ages was like. Where
Yeah.
all the tech was just lying around.
It's just they didn't have any use for it.
They had no idea
They didn't
what
know
it was.
They didn't have any time to worry about it.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things too is they were so destabilized and fighting
More than
amongst
that.
themselves
Yeah.
that they couldn't
Yep.
organize.
Yeah.
Not only that, no one could afford to actually
Yep.
explore and investigate these things.
Yeah.
Because again, they were poor.
But not just that, like, they forgot that chariots were, like, the biggest advantage in warfare. How do you forget that when all you're doing is fighting?
Yes.
This is
Every
fair.
sword.
No. Here we go. Knights. That's how. 'Cause Knights are so cool.
Knights are awesome.
Yeah.
Late Dark Ages, but I'll still fight this.
No, dude, knights were incredible.
Oh my gosh. I
But they still.
Also, spring steel.
don't know what that
We
is.
forgot how to make Damascus steel.
Yeah.
Every sword was a legendary sword.
Yeah.
It's like, we don't know how to make this.
Yeah.
We're not. Anyways.
We're not anywhere
Well,
near
we-
our topic.
Not
Okay,
even
so
close.
actually, what we are doing a good job is just listing off things that, like, hey, it got bad, but where was the areas that it stayed strong? Religious areas. When there was poverty. For some
Kind of.
cases.
Yeah. Again, at least my argument is wherever the money was, that's where you're going to find
Yeah.
people not
The
suffering.
church
as bad.
had all the money.
Well, that's one of the other problems is because
Yeah.
with the economic downturn, they turned to very extremist religious organization
Yeah.
within the Catholic Church, and the Catholic Church went to a money sucking policy
Yeah.
and removed the money from the places.
Yeah.
That it
Indulgences.
yeah.
And that's-
Less so than later medieval.
And that's just no fair.
Nice.
Very
For
funny.
99% of the population that didn't understand that joke. No, but it's like, yeah, my initial reaction when listening to that question is, whether this is correct or not, is always what religion?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What aspects of religion?
Yeah, because like,
Because saying religion isn't. All religions
They're
are
not equal.
very different from
Yeah,
each
they're
other.
not
even,
equal.
Even Protestant to Catholicism or different types of Buddhism or even different types of
Catholicism
Islam.
all the way, guys. Right?
Yeah, of
No.
course.
Oh,
It says the Reformed.
I love Catholics, but Catholicism is
I see.
got its thing.
Fine. Would you settle for orthodoxy?
No. So,
There's
Settling for orthodoxy would have been a great name for the podcast.
do you know what that sounded a lot like? One of my friends once said, we should go to Denny's. And then the other friend got mad at him and he says, you don't go to Denny's. You end up at Denny's. That sounded a lot like, should
talking
we
to-
go to the Orthodox Church? No, you don't go to the Orthodox Church. You end up at the Orthodox.
You're talking to the guy who chooses to go to Denny's.
I'm saying this with no offense in mind, but I think that a lot of people who ask this question haven't really thought about it too much.
I find they don't know history.
Well, yeah, I didn't want to say that, but because some of them do, they just focus on different parts than others. like the Crusades, even the Crusades weren't as bad as some people make them out
also,
to be.
also the first Crusade, hot take.
I wrote a paper on this.
Hot take. Here we go.
Defensive mission.
It was
Is
a justified war.
Yeah.
The religious reasons,
Can't be. It's yeah.
but the but political and specifically like just war theory, justified.
All the ones after that,
No,
especially the Northern Wars, Northern Crusades.
Well, especially when one of the Crusades just attacked their own.
Yeah, the Fourth
Place.
Crusade.
Yeah.
also who else?
Constantinople forever in my heart.
My last
Okay.
bit about
Wow.
this is who else are you going to point to during this time that was better? Like you can
The
say,
Muslims.
yeah, but not really though. That's the problem.
At this time, during the Dark Ages.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
They were
yeah.
better in some
No,
ways, but
in most ways.
sure.
Here's the thing.
But that was-
that
there's a-
argument doesn't work now.
Well, no,
Yeah.
yeah, no, because there's a graph you can see where when Christianity's on the rise, Islam decreases, and then when Islam it rises, Christianity decreases in like how well their populations are doing. And there's also an interesting follow where the Islamic population follows the Christian movement. So when Christianity goes into like moves across the globe,
Like North Africa, and then in 600, then it takes over North Africa.
then it takes after North Africa.
But first of all, the Visigoths come down and sack everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool.
Anyways, but like when you see Christianity move from one place to another, like centered, like Christianity started in the Middle East, then it moved to like Europe. Islam then took over the Middle East, and it also went into Africa, and then Islam took over Africa. Anyways, and there's a progression where you can see it follow, and then they also have an opposite,
Right.
like wobble back and forth.
But to answer the first question, that like would we be better off without religion? No.
the chaos.
There's many different ways, and we can get into specifics, but we'd take forever. It would take
Also,
forever.
that question assumes that Christianity is, just any religion in particular, is wrong. Because if any one religion is right, well then,
Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Well then, if it's true, then you're better off with it.
Yeah.
Also, that person shouldn't be saying we, because who's we? Probably not a lot of people are better off with their religion. Maybe you individually, you could maybe make a no.
But that might be because
You're assuming that it's false. If
I
it's
haven't
true,
made that case.
But you're also
even assuming
benefiting
it's false,
from
it's
everybody else that's religious in the community and the religion that cultivated the community around you.
ignoring if it's true.
Yeah.
But the third question: how can you say there's only one true faith? So specifically with us within Christianity, Christianity is extremely exclusive.
Yeah.
How do we deal with when people walk up and go, "Hey, you know what? Why do you think that you have like total,
Yeah.
exclusivism to a enjoying the afterlife or a peaceful afterlife or any sort of religious authority in your biblical text?"
Is this argument presenting the fact that all roads lead to the top of the mountain?
It would be in that vein, yeah.
Okay, because if that's true, then they're presenting the exact same argument.
How?
That everyone else is wrong, and that that their idea that everybody goes to the top of the mountain is the correct one.
To be fair, there are several religions that think that.
No, I know.
And sects within Christianity.
Yeah. Oh, fair. But what I'm saying is that the argument presented that all religions lead to the top of the mountain is the same argument as, like, what you're saying is that this is the proper way, and that if you don't agree with this, you're wrong.
Yeah.
It's also
Yeah.
the question depends on how you ask it. If you just say there's so many different religions, how can just one of them be right?
Which is the
it's just a
postmodernist.
fallacy.
Yeah, which is the postmodernist
Yeah,
idea.
you can't say look at how many there are. How can you say your specific one's right?
There's an
It's
infinite amount of
fallacious.
answers to a math problem, but that doesn't mean that that one is
Just
not
look at
right.
the amount of numbers. How do you know that 2 + 2 is 4? There's so many numbers.
I wrote down 5. How could you say
Yeah.
you're the answer's 4?
Yeah. Well, but I don't think that's most people.
No.
I think the majority of people are like, okay,
Well, it's-
how's your specific?
Well, they do the Oprah Winfrey thing, which is the idea of like, oh, you have your road to God,
Yeah.
I have my road to God.
There's
and
a spiritual reality.
Yeah,
but
well,
And
you
God
have-
says there's one road to God.
well, that's the Christian thing. Is
Yeah.
it's like,
Yeah.
you could be right.
Yeah.
I could be crazy. No, you could be right. But here's the problem: Jesus, if he is the Son of God, was like, hey, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. Period. End of discussion.
Yeah.
And I, as someone who thinks that he is the embodiment of the Israelite God and the second person in the Godhead, I have to go, oh, okay. I guess that's the way it is.
You can't treat things like a claim like that just flippantly and say, oh, it's the same as all these other things. Or even if, like, Islam, who says there is only one God, stuff like that, take it seriously. You look into it. You go, is that true? And study into Christianity, at least for me, goes, yes.
Yeah. Well, I think if someone approaches you, like, at work or whatever with that question, the answer, to me at least, and this is the answer that I've given because I've been asked this at work, is that's what Jesus said.
Yeah.
And so they have to come to terms, oh, I just disagree with Jesus. Okay.
But nobody wants to say they disagree with Jesus.
No, because Jesus is still common, like, Jesus is still a well-regarded figure in Western culture.
Yeah.
Which is nice.
For the most part.
Well, I think for the vast majority, people don't want to have Jesus against them.
Yeah, they don't want to be on the opposite
They'll do intellectual gymnastics so that he isn't.
Yeah.
But they don't want to out there and go, no, I disagree with Jesus. He's a bad man.
Yeah, how many people say Jesus is a bad person?
No,
Zero.
Christopher Hitchens.
Oh, yeah, but that's... You'll say that about a lot of things.
Yeah, I think it's also, like, you can also ask yourself the question of, like, what kind of... If there is a God that does allow people that have all these different beliefs to come to him, that means he doesn't really care about how people worship him or how people look at him or how people see him. But not just that, it means he doesn't care. He doesn't care that some people are sacrificing actual humans to him, and he doesn't care that other people are against sacrificing humans to him. And he doesn't care that these people are gathering people from one race and eliminating them for him. And this other religion is saying, hey, we shouldn't be doing that. We should be treating everybody fair. And, like, if that is true, then you have to, if you're saying that all gods are the same God and that the way you worship him is the way you worship him, then you're saying that this God is amoral.
Yeah. And then at that point, why would they care about the world? It would just be deism at that point.
Yeah, and and if all religions are leading to that same place, what about the ones that disagree and say there is no afterlife?
Right, yeah.
Right? What about the ones that say there's only hell and that it's at maximum torture all the time?
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Which is weird because I've heard the argument of, like, religion exists so you escape hell. It's only about creating a good idea in the afterlife. But there's examples of religions that are like, once you die, it's only pain and suffering. This is the best it gets.
Yep.
What?
Even early on.
Yeah, exactly. a big one.
Yeah. What are the big ancient religions? Greek. You go to the underworld. That's assumed.
Egyptian theology was the same.
Yeah.
Well, no, they did have a good afterlife if you made it. And the average person could make it. Right. Greeks, however, it was either like, it's like, having a bad nightmare for eternity.
Yeah.
Or it's being tortured for eternity. And those are your options.
Yeah.
In a scale.
It's you're either in Tartarus, right?
Yeah.
Or you're able to cross the river Styx because you were buried properly with 2 coins in your eyes, and Sharon brings you to the underworld where it's less bad.
Yeah.
But still bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
And so at least the Hellenistic religion wasn't birthed out of escapism.
No, it was birthed out of stoicism, and life sucks.
It seems like anger as well. It's like, what's going to happen? He goes, nothing. It's going to be horrible.
Only pain and suffering.
Well, death is bad, so what comes after must also be the same kind of thing.
Yeah. Which, well, it's not stoicism.
You're right.
Okay.
But
I'm sorry.
It's okay. Life is suffering. They're kind of the same.
That's very
surprisingly realistic. Very realistic of them.
Where do you think the Russians got it from?
Well, hey, I mean that's because Orthodoxy moved north when Islam came in, and that's
also Cyrillic.
That's why
has a lot of.
Oh man, this
Cyrillic
is so
has a lot of Greek origins.
It does.
That's why Russia has the best claim to the Roman Empire.
Oh no!
No,
fight me on it.
Oh my goodness!
We all know it's Turkey.
Not even close.
We all know it's Turkey, right?
Okay, now we can all fight Colton.
The city of Rome.
Okay, you're right.
No.
Okay.
Holy Turkey Empire.
Next question.
Next question.
That didn't even answer anything.
Check mark. We nailed that one on the head.
Well,
I feel like you got our point.
Well, we answered it kind of within 5 minutes, at least a little
Yeah.
bit, because Christianity claims to be an exclusive religion, and if you go the postmodern route, where it's like, there's so many answers, how could one be true? You're just
I wouldn't want to worship that God. If that's the case.
It's not even that. What's the point of even trying?
Yeah. He obviously doesn't care that people
Yeah.
are sacrificing people to him.
Why not just be agnostic or atheistic for your life?
Yeah.
What do you lose?
Also, screw that God.
Well, yeah.
If he's real.
Why would they bring you into existence just to live in suffering for no reason?
We sound like Hitchens right now.
unless suffering
Well,
is
it has a point.
that's a different podcast.
Yeah.
It's because I believe God actually has a reason.
Doesn't
Yeah.
religion cause violence? Question 5
Oh
in
my
the book.
gosh. I think
Doesn't
humans
religion
cause violence.
No. You're absolutely right. I completely agree.
It's the guns. Do guns shoot people?
I was going to reference
there's
that.
also-
Nice
I don't think it's that one.
I was going
People shoot people.
No, I think there's also cases where God does
Is-
tell people to get violent.
Yeah.
Sure, fair
Yeah.
enough.
Certain religions are built on violence. We won't
Built on
name
violence.
any.
Yes.
There's a big one.
And that there are times when the Christian religion, even if you
Yeah.
if you say that it's the natural outgrowing of Judaism,
Yeah.
Sure.
then we can have that inheritance. Then even the Christian religion is built
Gymnastics
on
around the New Testament. Yeah.
is built on instances of God ordaining violence.
Yep.
But for very specific reasons. And it's usually always only one reason.
Also, it's kind of an
Judgment.
and it's an extension of what he was already doing.
Yeah.
Like
No, he does it against his own people too.
Yeah. Well, that's the point. Is like the often brought up violence against the Canaanites that the Israelites do when they walk into Canaan is they were given. God told Abraham that you're going to have this land, but not yet because these people still have a chance to turn around. They're walking in the wrong direction. But be careful, because if you continue to live as immorally as they do in your time, your people will face the same judgment. And the idea is that God is just. And when that group specifically, nothing can be said about any other culture, whatever.
Not with the authority of the Bible.
Yeah,
although
no,
you
it-
can make a pattern claim.
Yeah. But too many people have done that so poorly.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah. And so God specifically said, this culture does horrible things, and they've been doing them for a long time. And I'm just, and I want to put an end to it.
it's the Sodom and Gomorrah thing.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because you have people who are like, the God in the Old Testament is absolutely atrocious, and I'm going to say what I'm going to say, and then I'm going to bring your Joel's information on Nahum. But you have
That was a fun paper. Yeah.
you have like the Sodom and Gomorrah thing where it's like, hey, how many good people until the Spirit?
Yeah.
How many? And how corrupt had been these cities until then? Because things grow in corruption. But you also have with Jonah, you have these people that are absolutely atrocious. And Jonah had just saw what the Assyrians were doing in the northern communities. Like the level of
Which God was already building to decimate the Jews.
Yeah, well, they had opportunity. It came into the northern kingdom, and at that point, it had not been a surety.
Yeah.
Well,
and
actually, it was, but it was delayed.
We should explain this whole scenario.
Sure. Do you want to give the background? Then I'll get into Jonah, and then Joel can get into Nahum, and we'll show how they're connected.
So coming off what I said about Abraham and God saying these people have a period of grace, Abraham's family moves to Egypt because of the events in Genesis. 400-ish years later, they come back into the land, and God says, hey, you're going to take this land that I've promised you to your ancestors, to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And I promised these people grace. And it's been 400 years, and they've only gotten worse.
Yeah.
They've only gotten worse. They sacrifice their children to death cult gods. They have temple prostitution. They mutilate their bodies. Sacrificing children for food. That's an awful idea. They do horrible, horrible things. And God says, hey, these people are doing horrible things. We like a better world. I like a better world, and I'm just. So I'm going to put an end to this. you're going to be my vehicle of judgment.
Yep.
Because I want you to remember that if you become like them, the same thing's going to happen to you.
Well, that's part of it for sure. But
And so they do it. They take the land. And then God says, hey, remember what just happened and remember what these people were like. Don't become like them. Lo and behold, 700 years later, they do become like them.
Well, yeah, kingdom splits.
Yeah.
Kingdom splits. They both become that way. Northern Kingdom is further along.
Yeah.
The Assyrians come in, boom, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wipe out the Northern Kingdom, right?
yeah,
As God's telling his prophets, I told you not to.
yeah, they kind of.
I told you not to sacrifice your children on idols.
Yeah.
Yeah, they kind of deserve it. To be fair,
Well, that's the whole point.
that's the point. I know.
And there was, yeah.
Well, but you see, so Jonah sees all this, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, God sends him there. Boat, fish, land, travel. Boom, he's there. He's sharing his modified message
Yeah.
of God, because he actually doesn't give them any choice. He says, "Hey, doom is coming. God's going to level this place in 3 days." Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the way it is. They repent. God doesn't, and Jonah's pissed. And
Yeah.
God's whole thing is like, dude, yeah,
There's
these people
100.
are horrible. There's so many people in there. And what about the animals?
Yeah.
And Jonah's like, these people are the level of atrocities that they would
Yeah.
do. They would be equivalent to our culture as God sparing Berlin
Yeah.
in World War II.
Yeah.
And it's like, holy moly.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
but to God's point, this gets into when people say like, "Oh, God's horrible," but no, he gave the Canaanites hundreds of years, and he said, "Hey, I don't want to do this. You have time to get better. Hundreds of years,
Well,
generations."
will you get
And he
into-
does it to the Israelites as well.
Yeah.
He gives them almost 1,000 years of warning, saying, "Don't become like these people, because when you cross that line, I have to step in because I'm moral and I don't want bad things to happen." And then with Jonah, he tells them, "Hey, the Israelites, you just saw them, your own people get wiped out because of the sins that they've committed for the immoral activity for hundreds and hundreds of years. And I just gave grace to the people who did it." And what God's also saying to him is that if you had asked for forgiveness, if you had changed your ways, you could have received the same grace that these Ninevites just did. And I think, yeah. And so,
Well, to their point, they do repent,
Yeah.
and God spares for a generation or two, but they don't stay that way.
Well, that's the
Yep.
that's
And then
the
that's the
point.
whole point with Nahum, which is what Joel did his whole big paper
Point
on.
of the
Yeah, I
Book of
did a-
Judges. Yeah.
Well, yeah, Book of Judges
But
is
we're
like
following with this theme.
an Israel thing, but we're talking about the kingdom of Assyria. And if you don't know about the Assyrian Empire in the March of Empires, or the Neo-Assyrian Empire, as it's usually called by people who don't study scripture, because there's more than one. It's a whole thing. Anyways, so in Nahum, he says basically the Lord will not have to strike twice, which is like I think it's Nahum 7.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, God's judgment is absolute.
Yeah.
It's talking about absolute judgment. And then this is, I think, a generation and some later or something like that.
I think it's a
I'm not
generation
sure.
or two, if my memory on Jonah is correct.
Yeah, the dating of Jonah is weird, and the dating of Nahum is weird, because we don't really know. But we do know that Assyria does fall. And that's what happens to evil cultures? Is that where we're going with this?
Well, we're talking with God's judgment.
Yeah, okay.
When his violence is not just flippant. It's
Yeah.
after hundreds and hundreds of years of grace.
Yeah.
And even in those horrible times, he's still offering it to
Yeah.
them. Days before they're about to get devastated by coming empires.
Yeah.
Right? God's
Remember-
saying, "Hey, I don't want this to happen to
Yeah.
you."
Why was Judah spared? Because Hezekiah did the right King Hezekiah
Yeah.
at the time did the right thing, and
Yeah.
they escaped by the skin of their teeth the Assyrian rage.
And that's what's we always look at the violence that God condones in the Bible, but every time there's violence, that's like maybe a decade of violence for a short period of time. Hundreds of years of God saying, "Hey, I'm going to continue blessing you.
Yep.
Don't go down the bad path."
Paul distills the whole thing in Romans 2, 4, and 5. And it's or do you presume on the riches of his kindness and forbearance and patience, not knowing that God's kindness is meant to lead to your repentance? But because your hard and impatient heart, you are storing up wrath for yourself on the day of wrath when God's righteous judgment will be revealed. Now he's talking the end of days judgment.
Yeah.
However, as we've seen a pattern actually throughout the Old Testament, there's the idea of the day of the Lord,
Yeah.
which it can happen multiple times, but it's a typological thing that continues to get more and more and more.
Yeah.
And so there'll be days
Reveals
of the
more
Lord
details about the final.
that when the day of the Lord.
We know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Generally.
But Paul lays that theme out. And so all of that to say, in the instances in the biblical text, when violence is directly condoned, there's a theological framework that gives reasons why it happens. It isn't innate oppression.
And it's just,
Yep.
Yeah.
and it's like a
Deserved.
scalpel.
Yeah.
He's specific. He's not just
Kill everything.
eliminating.
Smack the microphone.
Hit my microphone. Oh
It's
no!
gonna sound good in
Edit that out. Edit that out. Jamie.
Jamie's me this week.
I am Jamie. I am the Jamie now.
Yep.
Yeah, it's layered with grace. Like yes, the violence comes. Yes, the judgment comes. But it's hundreds of years of grace, warning after warning after warning after warning, in call to repentance after call to repentance, crying out of the Lord from his heart to not want his people to face this, and even letting himself be killed to prevent it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
That's the ultimate grace there.
Yeah.
It's just like, hey, judgment is coming. It's going to happen. But you don't have to go there.
Yeah. You can change.
Yeah.
I'm allowing it.
Yeah. And I'm seeking it. I'm actively hunting your heart out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I see with this thing, the idea of like God condones violence, how that's so horrible. Even though the people might have deserved it, like why would he want to kill people? That stuff like that. But I've seen this pointed out in apologetics books too, is that people will make the problem of pain argument. Why would God create a world like this? And wouldn't he want to destroy the evil kind of thing?
Yeah.
And then God destroys evil, and they're like, how could he do this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a double standard.
Yeah.
Some people make one or the other. I think both arguments are a little weak, except for emotionally. Emotionally, they have a lot of weight.
Yeah.
And there's no Christian command to be violent.
No, in fact, it's a bit of the opposite.
Yeah.
Yes.
There's no, yeah.
As like a tenet of Christianity.
Yeah.
It's actively trying to avoid that at all costs.
Yeah. The closest you have is sell your cloak and buy a sword.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The closest.
And the
A
other
few others too.
the other one is always when God does it, like when he strikes down Ananias and Sapphira.
Yeah, that's different.
But that's
But
not
that's different.
people doing it
Yeah.
on the behalf of God.
Yeah.
That as Christianity develops, the grace aspect of judgment.
Well, there's also the idea of with Christianity, how, and you see it again specifically in Revelation, but you see it throughout the majority of the New Testament. How is evil conquered?
Yeah.
By self-sacrifice, by
Self-sacrifice,
love,
prayer.
through
Yeah.
Jesus' example,
Yeah.
through turning the other cheek, and so
Yeah.
that's how evil is not defeated with a sword.
Defend your family when when your house is being attacked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
But the idea of the principalities of the air,
Yeah.
the idea that is not.
when they come to oppress you,
Yeah.
answer with grace and love.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's hop into that one last segment. We're nearing the end. I think.
Yeah. So that's a little bit of confronting Christianity. The segment, however, I was going to do where the lost get profound.
Oh.
Okay.
You're not going to quote Marx again, are you?
So can you briefly run over what that segment is to those who aren't familiar?
Yeah. I don't know. Is this the first time we've done lost get profound?
It might be, but I feel like for the first few times we should really
Probably.
gloss over it.
For those new people listening.
Yeah. Because any listener's a new listener when you're us.
Because you only listen to us once, then you never come back. No, the lost get profound is where we pick someone who's not necessarily a Christian. It can be an atheist, agnostic, whatever, a different religion.
Like communists. No, sorry.
Like a communist. And they say something that is super insightful.
Sure.
That is like, oh my goodness, that not just
Something that resonates.
Yeah, but it's specifically like, oh, that's that's a truth that's explicitly stated in the Christian religion, not just something that some someone who's not a Christian that says something that's just intelligent. That happens all the time. But what's interesting with this one is they say something that's super profound in the Christian world, and so lost get profound, and then each one of my 3 other co-hosts here get to make a guess. Okay.
Uh-oh.
So here we go. It's very short.
I guess at who said it?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
True strength manifested itself not in the exercise of power, but in the willingness to give it up.
Oh,
I know this
one.
quote. I know this quote.
Abraham Lincoln.
Nope.
Abraham Lincoln.
Newer.
Okay.
I know this.
This was like a huge thing when COVID first hit, and they were like, "Hey, governments shouldn't be powerful or something." I don't know. I remember hearing this quote in that
Is it
context.
C.S. Lewis?
Nope.
No.
Again, the Christian.
Oh, you got me. C.S. Lewis again.
I don't think it's the quote you guys are thinking of.
Okay, well.
Could you read it once more?
Yes. True strength manifested itself not in the exercise of power, but in the willingness to give it up.
Manifested? This is talking about a specific instance.
Isn't it?
Oh my gosh, I
Newer than Abraham Lincoln.
I know what this. I've heard this quote a few times before, and I can't place it.
JFK.
No.
It's not Jordan Peterson, is it?
No, it's not. I can give you a hint. It's a book I've read.
Oh my God.
That limits it down to a few thousand books. Yeah.
I've read that many books.
N.T. Wright.
That's a Christian.
You're right.
He might be Anglican, but
N.T.
he's
Wright's
Christian.
brother.
I don't know.
NT wrong.
Almost.
No, OT wrong.
I'll give you one last hint. It's on your bookshelf.
Tom Holland's The Dominion.
You got it.
Yeah.
Really?
Well,
Yeah.
it took us forever.
What do you mean, really?
I mean, I get it.
It makes
It's
sense.
fair, yeah.
Yeah.
I
And he's
can't believe
talking
I
about
never got it.
Jesus.
He is talking about Jesus.
Yeah.
I remember where I heard it before.
Yeah,
you read it to me.
I read it to you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I probably even read it to you, Joel.
You did. That's
Yeah,
why we
You
do
don't
it.
feel like an idiot.
Probably you're like, I heard it during COVID. I'd be like, well, I read it during COVID.
profound how beautiful that statement is.
It's a great thing. Okay, I'm going to read it one more time because it's a good statement.
The one who gave it up was Jesus, and I never got it.
No, you did because you're with us walking with him in faith.
That's awesome. That's
True
good.
strength manifested itself not in the exercise of power, but in the willingness to give it up.
Well, that's like
such a good quote.
That's a great line from Schindler's List, where Amon Göring, the guy who's the commandant of the place, is talking with Oscar Schindler.
How much are they worth to you?
No, and he
that's
says,
great.
That was a
he
great
says, "Do you know why they're scared of us?" And he says, "Why? Because you've got a gun." And he says, "No, because we have power over them. Right? We can kill them whenever we want. We can tell them what to do. They can blah blah blah." And he's like, "That's not power, right? Power is having the right to kill somebody and choosing not to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's the same.
Powers of mercy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I really enjoyed that episode,
That was
guys.
a fun podcast.
Episode 5.
Remember to conquer with love and grace this week.
You know what? Yeah. I don't disagree, but it's a little cheesy.
What's
gotta
that
have
song? This is how I fight my battles.
We should start
We're
playing.
not going to get into worship right now. Are we?
know.
Yeah, we should have a QWERTY moment at the end of every episode.
Well, I'd like to thank all the listeners. Thank you for getting this far. And meet us next week for episode 6.
Mhm.
Like,
Do we
comment, subscribe.
Do we finally talk about dinosaurs in that one?
We will be talking
End the
about dinosaurs
podcast
next
now.
week.
And no.
Definitively.